Have you ever doubted God? Have you ever doubted your church? Most of us throughout our lives have doubted our faith in something or someone. Doubt can be as simple as a feeling of uncertainty or just being unsure. It can be us distrusting or being unconvinced about a person, a group of people, an idea or belief, or a situation that's present in our lives. Doubt can bring about extreme anxiety. When left to fester, when left unaddressed, it can lead us to feel like everything we've ever believed or thought to be true is wrong. Have you ever felt like that? I know I have. But as intelligent, questioning human beings who are trying to determine what's true and what to value, what to commit to, it's healthy to feel a level of apprehension or indecision, wavering confidence every now and then in our search for the truthful, the reliable, and the personally fulfilling. Good doubt is questioning that springs from a positive spirit. A constructive skepticism that wonders about the risks and pitfalls of life. And it helps us to provide a framework to truly understand our place in the world, our place before God. I believe one of the greatest blessings we encounter as Christians is the freedom to admit when we have doubts. As faithful Christians, we should have the audacity to ask tough questions concerning our faith or our traditions. But for some, doubt is synonymous with a lack of faith. But doubt and faith really are two sides of the same coin, the yin and yang of, if you would, of Christian life. Doubt isn't the opposite of faith, it's just an element of faith. And rather than suppressing our doubts, we should explore them, allow them to set us on a journey of discovery and of deepening of our beliefs and convictions. What about doubting Thomas, I hear you say, who had the audacity to ask for evidence that Jesus rose from the dead? Story is often used to make doubt seem disloyal or corrosive, that doubt is sin and doubters should be replaced with true believers. Doubt is heresy and doubters are heretics. But is that really what the story of Thomas is all about? I think that the story of Thomas has to be one of the most misunderstood passages of Scripture. Growing up, I was always led to believe that Thomas didn't have enough faith. He was weak. He wasn't like the others. We've been told that Thomas doubted Jesus. But if we read the story carefully, we realise that firstly, it isn't Jesus that Thomas doubts, it's the disciples. But also that Jesus never rebukes Thomas for his doubt either. In fact, when Jesus appears to them a week later, Thomas has the opportunity to share in the experience of the risen Lord. And like the others, he immediately confesses his faith. Indeed, Thomas calls Jesus my Lord and my God, which is one of the greatest claims in the Gospels. I think history has been unfair to Thomas. He should be remembered as confessing Thomas, not doubting Thomas. Especially as I think when a lot of people say doubting Thomas, they mean lack of faith Thomas. While Thomas does not doubt Jesus, he does doubt the disciples. And not just in regards to a minor issue of discipline or procedure, he doubts the central Christian message that God raised Jesus from the dead. Some of us too, at various times in our lives, can have doubts about all kinds of things in our faith, and some quite significant, like Thomas. There are very few believers who get through life without asking some serious questions about God or about their church. And these questions are good in themselves. They're necessary for a mature and adult faith. What we need to ensure is that we sincerely want to search for answers to those questions. Thomas is like all of us who sometimes struggle to believe what everyone else in our church seems to accept. Here's the encouragement to us to have the courage and the patience to wait and seek for answers. I think it's also important to note here that something else that's often overlooked about the story of Thomas. Even though the first followers of Jesus are filled with the presence of the risen Lord, and even though Thomas refuses to believe what they say, refuses to believe their witness, they remain faithful to him in spite of his doubts. And we know this because a week later he's still with them. They didn't expel Thomas from the group or excommunicate him. They held on to him in the hope that he would experience the Lord himself. The story of Thomas tells us that Christ can take our fears and doubts and transform them into a powerful Christian witness. That when we can only see our woundedness and hopelessness and death, faith, hope, and love can have the final word. Thomas often gets a bad rap for doubting the resurrection of Jesus, but in reality he was no more doubtful than the other disciples and apostles. None of them believed that Jesus had been risen until they saw him either. We should applaud Thomas for his insistence on wanting tangible proof. After all, Thomas was well aware that Jesus wasn't the first messianic figure on the scene to be crucified by the Romans. Thomas showed great restraint and demonstrated the proper amount of rational doubt. Doubt can be a wonderful tool that propels us into a deeper learning, earnest soul-searching, and spiritual revelation. Faith based on absolute certainty leads to fanaticism, but faith tempered with doubt is mature and stable. Many believers struggle with their own doubts about life's unpredictability. We have very real struggles in our lives that generate an uncertainty about whether God is to be found in all of the turmoil. Faith is a daily, ongoing exercise. It's a risk. Doubts arise, we struggle with God, and hopefully, faith grounded in the resurrection will triumph, even when we don't have all the answers and life doesn't make sense. The author of the Hebrews writes, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." Faith is not void of doubt, but requires a daily commitment to developing our spiritual walk despite life's uncertainties. Faith doesn't take away doubts, it's strengthened by them. And faith doesn't deliver us from our problems and our heartaches, but gives us the strength to persevere through them. But can doubt be bad? Can it be unhealthy? And if so, what drives unhealthy doubt? I believe bad doubt, is questioning that springs from a negative spirit, a destructive skepticism that dwells on issues and problems with the hope that everything will come tumbling down. I know I've felt like that before. Bad doubt often comes in two forms. One can stem from a life of blind faith, overconfidence in what we believe, having never questioned our faith, never had to ask hard questions, and never sought out answers when doubts rise up. This mentality is one where the very definition of faith is that you don't know. The focus is on the things unseen and not on the evidence. Stop trying to ask questions and just believe. I'm sure all of us have heard that before. There's almost a fear that if you do ask questions that you'll lose your faith. And the second kind of bad doubt comes from persistent cynicism, where one spends all their time trying to poke holes in everything and mock all truth statements, undermining all claims of purpose. Bad doubt can often be identified by asking ourselves some pretty simple questions. Does my doubt evoke more anxiety than curiosity? Does doubt pose a series of distressing what-if questions? Does this doubt rely on black or white assumptions? Does this doubt prompt a strong urge to act or avoid acting in a fashion others might perceive as excessive in order to reduce the anxiety it creates? Finding a natural balance between confidence and skepticism is difficult. And for the believer, it's made even more so by the fact that our society around us is constantly telling us that faith is a cop-out. Richard Dawkins, for example, is well known for his dogmatic statements about faith. Faith is blind trust in the absence of evidence, even in the teeth of evidence. For Dawkins, this means that faith is a form of mental illness. He's been quoted as saying that. This nasty intellectual perversion is limited to religious people. Faith, being belief that isn't based on evidence, is the principal vice of any religion. Where science and reason prove their convictions, religious people run away from facts and evidence and live in a fantasy world which is totally disconnected from reality. As Dawkins puts it, faith is the great cop-out, the great excuse to evade the need to think and evaluate evidence. But is this the type of faith that the Bible expects us to have? Are we encouraged in Scripture to have faith without evidence? Does the Bible have a habit of making claims about things without providing reasons to believe those things? If we break down the Hebrews 11 quote that we all know so well, the term faith is defined as trust, firm persuasion, belief, and confidence. The substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. The word substance is rendered assurance by the ASV. The word literally means a standing under, a support. And the term evidence is rendered conviction by the ASV. And it's defined as proof or proving. So faith is not a blind acceptance of unprovable opinions. It's not based on feeling, emotion, or a blind leap. It's a conviction supported by evidence. And the Bible is full of examples of appealing to external sources in order to back up the claims that are being made. Deuteronomy 3:11, only King Og of Bashan was left of the remaining Rephaites. It is noteworthy that his sarcophagus was made of iron. Does it not indeed still remain in Rabbath of Ammonites? It is 13.5 feet long and 6 feet wide according to standard measures. The author here doesn't just say something without qualification. He gives his statement and then effectively says, if you don't believe me, head over to Rabbath and see it for yourself. He provides the audience with evidence for his claim. These next quotes show that when the disciples preached to people, they were providing eyewitness testimony on the resurrection. They weren't simply telling people to accept what they said on the basis of no evidence. They specifically point out, we have seen the risen Jesus. John 3:11, I tell you the solemn truth. We speak about what we know and testify about what we have seen, but you people do not accept our testimony. In Acts 10:39, we are witnessing of all the things he did in both Judea and Jerusalem. They killed him by hanging him on a tree, but God raised him up on the third day and caused him to be seen, not by all people, but by us, the witness God had already chosen, who ate and drank with him after he rose from the dead. And there are many examples in Scripture of where we're expected to explain our faith. In 1 Peter 3:15, but set Christ apart as Lord in your hearts, and always be ready to give an answer to anyone who asks about the hope you possess. 2 Corinthians 10:5, every arrogant obstacle that is raised up against the knowledge of God, and we take every thought captive to make it obey Christ. Colossians 4:5-6, conduct yourselves with wisdom towards outsiders, making the most of the opportunities. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you should answer everyone. 2 Corinthians 12:12, indeed the sign of an apostle were performed among you with great perseverance by signs and wonders and powerful deeds. The simple reality of life is that all of us, irrespective of our views about God, base our lives on beliefs, on things that we cannot prove to be true, but believe to be trustworthy and reliable. The philosopher Julia Kristeva observed, "Whether I belong to a religion, whether I be agnostic or atheist, when I say I believe, I mean I hold as true." Christianity holds that faith is basically warranted belief. Faith goes beyond what is logically demonstrable, yet is nevertheless capable of rational motivation and foundation. It is not a blind leap into the dark, but a joyful discovery of bigger picture of things. It is a complex and rich idea which goes far beyond simply asserting or holding that things are true. Biblical faith is evidence-based faith. It's not irrelevant in society today. It's not based on illogical reasoning or fictitious events. Biblical faith is based on critical analysis, using established principles of interpretation. The faith of the Bible is rational, coherent, and relevant. Doubt is an essential part of a robust, defensible faith. It can be healthy when it is supported by a positive purpose, one that is searching for answers and not looking to just cut down. But doubt can be unhealthy. It can eat away at us, and it can lead to anxiety and depression. It's important that we learn to identify the warning signs around unhealthy doubt in ourselves and in those around us. Faith is at the core of Christianity, but we are called to have a faith. We are not called to have a faith that is blind or left without challenges. Biblical faith allows for doubt. And it's our responsibility of members of God's family to watch out for each other. In a community of believers, we need to be mindful of others and aware that just because we personally have wrestled with a particular topic and allowed ourselves to process our doubts about something doesn't mean that everyone around us is in the same place. Doubt for some people can be faith-destroying if the individual is not given the ability to work through it. We have a responsibility to each other to provide an environment where people feel safe to air their doubts without having them torn down. But more importantly, that we provide the support for those who have doubts, show them why it's okay, and how to work through the questions they might have. Many people leave our community because of the very real doubts they have about God or about our community. And they often leave because they have felt like they haven't had the ability to air those feelings in a safe environment. Let's take the examples of the disciples who, despite Thomas's doubts to their claims of seeing the risen Lord, continued to meet with him. And when Jesus did appear to Thomas, he gave him the evidence that Thomas needed to confirm his faith.